close the door and people won't see it.
Some things haven't changed.
Yeah.
We're being made out of what's called tin plate. My raw material is sheet iron with a tin coating on it. So the sheet iron is what's making it rigid, and the tin coating on it is what makes it bright and shiny, rust resistant, makes a nice reflector in lighting devices. The tin doesn't flavor food like iron will. You can eat and drink out of this stuff. Cooking it. Chisel and just do sort of like a cross. And then just, separate the top, separate the door, and go on to the next step.
Yeah. There we live have a lot of transplants, but not as prevalent.
Big one.
We're going to bend it out of shape, which I nicely did. But we can bend it back into shape. It's still not exactly right. So I'm putting this flat plane into this flat plane. So that's my own particular idiosyncrasy. A little bit more, but I'm going to heat that up a little bit more. So this is a poker, fireplace poker. Fancy one. That's about, 3 hours work, 4 hours work. I don't really keep track of these. But it was one of the offerings that Smith had for his customers. We're in a very, very much of a fireplace cooking part of history. Going slowly over to coal. Fireplaces were using wood. Coal is showing up in cities, and it's a whole different arrangement to cook with coal. You need a coal grate, and the English were doing that a lot earlier than we were in this country. They'd run out of trees earlier than we had, so. All right, you can do that just a little up. Pretty much done. So the twist is a decoration. So when you're looking at function versus decoration, nothing to do with function. That's just decoration. All right. I guess we're going to call it done. That's 1,000 degrees. Everybody asks, how do you know what pickle?
But yeah, you had to do all that just to get to the tongue.
Think about all the different ways your tongue can move.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
The ones who are really responsible for running the household. I mean, they, are planning the meals and doing the cooking.
It's actually sterile. So the earliest you eat it, the less of a problem there is. That's alright, I got a little bit more solid. It will also absorb all of the juices that are flowing out of it. Roast it right in front of the fire in something called a tin kitchen.
The only thing this little cup needs, or this little jar needs, is to have the base trimmed out a little bit. To do that, I'll just take a tool they call a rib, pull the rib against the bottom while it's turning. And just trim it out a little bit. Next thing we need on the bottom, everything gets a foot. A foot is that little ridge that goes around the base. It's kind of a decoration, but it's also helpful to us when it comes time to glaze the pottery. Quite often you'll take and dip the pottery into a bucket of glaze. Gives you something to hold on to. So that's what the foot is. To make a foot for this, what I'll use is a little stick that has a notch out of it. You can see the little notch is missing right there maybe. Hold the notch against the base. And it gives me a foot. So I should wipe this down before I take it off from the wheel. Come on. That should be okay. And to take it off from the wheel, a little extra water, piece of string or a piece of wire, and you actually cut a little bit of the bottom right off. So this now can dry. After it's dried, then it can be glazed. You can tell when it's dry because it'll look like that, light gray. Interesting thing about this clay is it's called red clay. Doesn't look red at all, but it does look red after you've fired it in the kiln. It turns sort of a brick red color that looks like that. If you glaze it, then it darkens it up some. It gives you that shiny, glossy coat of glass, of course, and it looks like that. And that's what that will look like when it's finally finished. Pottery, so I can earn myself a little extra credit at the store. And so the man who owned this building did it for many, many years. The building comes from South Goshen, Connecticut. I've wedged this clay. Just have to get it into a shape I can work with. And that should be all right. So the piece of clay goes in the middle of the wheel, just like that. First thing you have to do is get the clay wet. Next thing I do is press down on it a little bit because I want to make sure it stays where I put it on the wheel. After that, I have to center it. Actually, before I center it, I'm going to smooth it down a little bit. Until it's not centered, you can see a few lumps going by. We'll see if we can get rid of those. Start at the top and work my way down. It's coming into center now. It's not there yet, but it's getting there. Every piece is done the same. Big pieces, small pieces. Everything has to be centered before you can go ahead and work on it. Trim a little bit off from the bottom.
So it stays where it is.
Sort of like that. While we're at it, we might trim a little bit off from the top just to kind of smooth it out a little bit. Let's see if we can just pull this up one more time. Now this cone shape is fine for centering, but you can't make anything out of this shape. So you have to change the shape. When you change the shape, try to get something you can work with. All my scraps go over there. I can squeeze those scraps together at the end of the day, make another pot, probably tomorrow or the next day. So I have to change the shape so I can make something. Once the clay gets dry, you have to wet it, keep it slippery. And probably should go a little bit lower. Try and smooth out those lines a little. Now, if I'm going to make a jar similar to that, I start with a hole in the center. So that means I have to find the middle. When I find the middle, I have a choice. I can use my finger or I can use my thumbs. I kind of like to use my thumbs. Make a little dent in what I think is the center. Take a look at that little dent. If it's moving all over the place, I know I'm not in the center. It seems to be pretty good. Once I find the center, then I can open it up. I've got to make a hole like the one here. But of course I can't do it all at once. I have to do a little bit at a time. This is going to go all the way to the bottom. Well, not quite the bottom. I have to leave a little clay down there, right? Otherwise I'll have a hole in the bottom of my cup or whatever it is that I'm making. That should be about enough right there. Well, this isn't big enough across, so I have to make it wider. To make it wider, I'll squeeze the clay like that. When I squeeze it, I'm going to bring it up to the top, and I'll make it taller too. And you have to do this a little bit at a time. If you're in a hurry, it won't work. That's a little wider, about halfway there probably. And again, I guess. Now, from here, if I were going to make a plant pot, I'd just pull it up straight, just straight out like that. I could make a plant pot the same shape as those up there. If I want to make a mug, I'll pull it straight up. If I want to make a bowl, I'll pull it out over this way. So if I'm going to make this shape, I have to pull it out a little bit, and I have to pull it back in a little bit. So we'll see. I think I better thin it out just one more time, a little bit more. So now we've got the easy part over with. Now we have to try the hard part. I make a little groove in the outside. I'm making a groove on the inside. Groove on the outside is so I can hook this finger into it, right down there. And then I'm going to hook this finger into the groove on the inside. And then I'm going to squeeze the clay in between my two fingers, just like that. But when I squeeze it, I'm going to bring my fingers up too. So see what happens. Doesn't always work, of course. I'm running out of water, so I have to get a little more water. That kind of gives me the rough shape that I need. I have to make it a little bit bigger down here. So that means I have to put my hands inside and push it out. Sort of like that.